Welcome back. As I spill my trash all over the floor. It's a horrible place for a trash can. What was I saying? Oh yeah, welcome back to RamDragon's art studio. Yesterday we drew a ghost. Today, look how wrinkly that sheet is. Too much water on a page not made for watercolor, not made for inking like that on. But here we go. I don't know why I get bothered when my sheets don't line up square, but there we go. Now we're lined up, and my camera's all crooked because I keep whacking it almost every time I sit down here. Someday I'll fix this and get a real camera rig. But there we go. There we are. Nice fresh sheet of paper, and today's prompt is ancient. I have no idea what that means. I was fiddling around with, you've seen this ring on the string before. I was fiddling around with things, and you can kind of see it. All I did is I glued a veneer to the surface. I wanted to dig in there and make it an inlay, but I just don't have the tools for that. But that just glued onto the surface. That veneer looks pretty good. There's walnut, I think. Anyway, enough of that. Let's get down to business. I was not going to stream today, and then as I looked back, I hadn't missed a single weekday this month. I have only turned off my stream on the weekends, and I couldn't let this one go. I've got to keep up with it. So this is probably going to be a shorter drawing. Trying to think of something ancient to draw. Let's see. I'm thinking. Oh, I know. Oh, yeah. I know exactly. I love Castle in the Sky. One of my favorite movies. So let's do a weird robot guy. Kind of inspired, but not exactly. I'd have to have a reference to do anything more. Let's move that head forward more. Kind of a giant ancient robot. How would its hips work? Its hips would work something like... This is going to be a weird one to figure out. Not a weird drawing. I'm not, unfortunately, that imaginative, but we'll see if we can work something out. Weird hip assembly here. It's just reminded me of that old Disney movie, Black Hole. And if you haven't seen Black Hole, you are in for a treat when you go and look it up. It is one of the most weirdly bizarre '80s movies ever made. Very obviously trying to cash in on the Star Wars franchise. In one of the clumsiest ways you can imagine. But this weird hip assembly reminded me of one of the robots they had. They had a whole bunch of puppet robots on sticks. And one of them just had these two little spheres underneath it where we were led to believe they caused levitation so it could float around. But this isn't a levitating robot. This is a golem. Let's figure out how his legs would have fallen as he laid to slumber here. Let's first sketch in some there we go. And then how would they have built these legs? These legs would have been built as pillars, cylinders. Yes, I'm going to still leave the arms as tapey things. Like I said, I like Castle in the Sky. I really enjoyed the aesthetic of it. And you know, every couple of years when Hayao Miyazaki reveals that he was lying about his retirement and he's going to do one more movie, I always get excited. Oh, I made a horrible mistake. Washed my hair. That wasn't the mistake. But I'm out of the hair product that I use after I shower. And one of them is a conditioner that I have. I still have the conditioner. And the other one is an oil that I like to use. I use like 2 or 3 drops of oil in my hair, and it keeps the frizzies down, especially this time of year when it gets, you know, below 70 and everybody turns their heaters on because it's Houston, and I don't get it. But I left my drink all the way across the room here. But they turn their heaters on and it dries out the hair, dries out the air rather, and my hair goes all frizzy as a result. So I spent this morning at a employee orientation making not making, that's not the right word, taking notes on all the websites I need to have access to be able to do my job. Barely able to concentrate because I keep having to brush my hair out of my face. I think I'm just going to go with cylinders. I've already said that, and I'm just kind of reaffirming that decision. That was the wrong. I'm thinking of the sphere as a bisected shape. So the leg kind of goes up here across the sphere, and then that's the front of the leg there. So I want the peak of this weird hingy thing to match right there. But I kind of want it to be squared off to the bottom part of the leg. And squared off on a sphere is not the right way to do it. But we'll get there. We'll get there. And then I'm not worried about these. Even though it's an ancient mechanical thing, I'm not worried about its parts being too straight. So I'm just going to sketch this like I would a foot. Probably more this way. There we go. Just bring that up a little bit. But I'm going to draw it more like a shoe. And just make a hinge here. And then the same thing over here. I'm going to make it a little bit smaller so that we have the illusion of foreshortening. And this circle needs to be more round. There we go. And again, just sketching it in like a foot, the exact same way I would a foot, and then drawing it in like a shoe, kind of wrapping like the ball is setting into a shoe shape. Whoops, must be near the end of the lead there. These mechanical pencils, by the way, are, despite having all of the real graphic pens and pencils at my disposal, these cheap little Bic disposable pencils have always been my favorite thing to draw with. I think every comic book I drew in high school, I drew with one of these things. Maybe a little bit thicker. And then I almost forgot the toes over here. Getting sidetracked with other things. There we go. Is that showing up on camera? No, everything's blue again. Give me just a moment to adjust my camera. Gotta figure out why it keeps switching to this weird blue hue. I configure my video. And then I bring the lightness back up just a little bit. If I mess with the gain, it washes out. So I try not to mess with the gain. But like, just trying to make the page look white. Whoops. Let's put the contrast back. And my white balance needs to be more white. This way. There we go. And then I save it, and it's saved. It should be completely saved, right? Should stay that way. Should stay there. Anyway, we'll get these legs all sketched in. Put a ridge there just to remind me. I actually like this seam. I'm going to copy it over here. Trying to make it look robotic, but still identifiable as a human. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just draw this as a helmet shape. Real generic helmet shape there. We'll put in some robotic features. And kind of lenses for eyes. And maybe some kind of a weird grate here. No, it's not going to have a mouth. But it might have a seam. We'll just put a seam right down the middle here. And then bring that up over the top. Do I want to put a seam here? No. I think it looks better as a blank slate. Give it something a little bit more difficult to anthropomorphize, but not too difficult to anthropomorphize. I think that was one of the greatest things about Castle in the Sky when those robots were designed. They were designed with a lot of capacity to emote with body language, but none at all to emote with their faces. There we go. Let's get this other shoulder in and bring its arm down. I think this is going to be hard to do. I want to have the hand end here. And that'll be another sphere joint and this weird kind of rectangle-y thing that comes off there. There we go. And then because to sell the illusion of depth, I do want to have this kind of cross a little bit. Actually, I'll bring it up behind here. I'll have it cross a little bit. I need to thicken that up. There we go. And then through there, and then on the back side of the arm here, we'll have yeah, I think that'll work. Let me do it on the side of the arm here. That'll give me a better delineation of how I want the inside to fade out. There we go. And then I'm just going to beef up this hand a touch. With a couple of spheres like this. And then I'll have one finger. It'll be kind of mitt fingers here. So this one will kind of come up and be thick and hang down. And then this one will be nice and thin. And more dexterous. And I'm liking that. I like that a lot. Man, I'm cruising along on this. Last time I did a figure this involved on this stream, I was an hour in before I picked up the ink. And I think I'm, what, a half an hour in? And I'm just about to where I want to think about the environment and making them look ancient. And then I can pick up the ink. Worst sphere I've ever drawn. Yuck. That was almost a disaster. I'm blocking my camera again. I'm totally blocking my camera. Sorry, guys. I don't like that at all. It's too big. It's too big. I want it to be closer to the wrist. There we go. It's marginally better. Okay, and then since he's ancient, let's stick him up against a rock face here. And I definitely want to have a rock here that his arm has been resting on for a few centuries. And, you know, I don't really know how to draw a rock face other than trying to think of things as modified cubes and just overlapping them and sticking some spheres in and mushing them down. I think a nice ancient tree will have grown up. Oh man, I lost all that detail in the toe. That's okay. This is going to be a nice, huge, healthy, big ol' tree. Let's put another branch right there, right above it, but kind of coming out the front. There we go. And that's going to be obscured almost right away by leafy coverage, and then leafy coverage up here. We'll send a branch out the back. I can't send a branch out there. That's not how trees work. Let's send a bunch out here. This is going to have to kind of come from in between. Right there. Just, trees are weird. You got all sorts of perspective and angles on them that you have to worry about. And then down here, rather than trying to draw all of the roots and how it comes into the ground, I'm just going to have some foliage down here. And, you know, foliage up here in front of this one, and some more scattered rocks. And then I think we're going to have some like ancient hanging moss and vines growing up. And that's going to have a variety of different leafy sections here. More rock, and maybe a bush there. And I don't think I'm going to indicate too many more things. We're getting pretty good on the ancient part of it. I do want to have bodies of rust growing on it. Like mostly rust. And let's think about light source. I'm thinking this way is going to be good. So we'll give him some direct light. We're going to have this. This is going to cast a shadow like in this direction here. So up over kneecap here, and big tree shadow along here. And then this is also going to have that's a primary shadow, so we'll add in some secondaries. This is all going to be in shadow because of the back of him. And again, secondary or a rather primary shadow from the robot will overwhelm all of these shadows. So the shadows on the rocks will be secondary. So this is all going to be kind of shaded. This is all going to be dark. That's going to be dark. This is going to be dark. and etc., etc. You see where I'm going with this. My first mentor once told me that nothing in nature exists as lines. And I got so excited. I was like, wow, that's like truth of the universe stuff there, man. And I went home and I told my parents about it. I'm like, Mom, Dad, I just discovered something new. There's no lines in nature. And my dad's an engineer. And he laughed. Of course there's lines in nature. You couldn't fathom of how to engineer anything without lines. Of course there has to be lines in nature. Well, no, if you think about it, nature has edges. Of course, he's an engineer, so logic appeals to him. He liked that explanation better, but it was kind of a difficult truth to get past him. So let's put our seam here. Let's not forget to mirror it on this hand. And let's go ink. Now that I have some primary shadows laid out, I'm actually going to lay down a few more. Let's grab the camera and move everything, obviously. Let's grab my 2B. Because it's good for shading large things like this tree here. And I want to lay down these shadows before I forget. And I'm shading each of these bunches of leaves as separate entities so that they appear to overlap more. Yeah, what else did I forget? This rock here. And this foot needs a shadow. And this bush needs a shadow, and this bush needs a shadow, and etc., etc. Okay, let's stop stalling. Let's go inking. After another caffeine break. Yeah, there we go. And where are we at? We are just at 40 minutes, and we're getting into ink now, so not doing too bad. Brush pen. This is a Pigma. Pigma? Yeah, Pigma. Watched a whole bunch of comic book artist videos last night. I'm all hyped up on cross-hatching techniques now. It's remarkable how much attention is paid to the pencil artist. And the inkers are all just kind of written off every time I see a video like that talking about some of the great artists in comic books. They talk about the pencil artists, and they hardly ever talk about the inkers that had to work with them. Because once it gets to the page, what you see is a collaborative work, even in black and white. Very rarely do you get, even today, do you get the primary pencil artist also doing the inking. I want the inside of this to be very, very thin, which is where brush pens really excel. And on this side, I want the face plate where it overlaps the lens more to be thicker, and then the very outside of this lens to be nearly insubstantial. If I had a better light under here. I know I say that having to adjust my camera every time because my lights are washing out my page, but in reality, the lights in here are not that bright. And I wish I had some brighter studio lights to really allow me to see the page right. You see, I got too deep with my brush there because I can't see it as well as I would like. Drawing spheres with brush pens is particularly difficult because you want to pull the pen in the direction you're drawing. And if you're following some of my videos, you're probably not used to seeing me take such care with a pen brush because my other brush is pretty beat up and old, but it's fantastic for what I use it for. But I do abuse the heck out of that brush. I scrub back and forth with it, and I push into the page with it. I do all sorts of things with that brush that really not supposed to do. But that brush is already beat up and old, so it's not too concerning to me. You can see with this lighting level, I can barely see the tip of the brush, and I keep going just a touch too deep. Now I'm trying to pick and choose which lines really need the pen brush. because I can go in with my regular brush and kind of finish off some of these areas much more quickly. But for now, I want to get my light touch brush, this pen brush here, to lay down some very light lines in this seam here. Where things are looking more mechanical, I don't mind having a more consistent line, but where things are rusted, I want it to look a lot more organic. And so the rust lines on the brush, see I went too deep again there. Just hard to gauge the depth of the brush when I can't quite see when the tip is bending. Just can't get that depth perception good. Oh, it would have been cool to embed him in a waterfall too. That would have been neat. Oh well, coulda, woulda, shoulda, right? You know, I was planning on completely skipping today altogether, but I am so glad I decided to make the effort. I had a little bit more time this afternoon than I was expecting, and I was just going to Netflix and chill for a minute, but this is a habit I need to maintain. Especially, I've mentioned before, I'm fairly certain I am on the autism spectrum, what is lovingly called an Aspie, those with Asperger's. And what that means to me is having a schedule is the most important thing to making sure stuff gets done. So, sticking to this was ultimately a good idea. I am abusing this brush tip in a bid for speed. Need to be more careful with it. So one of my more popular videos already was a test broadcast I did where I was streaming gameplay from City of Heroes. And I wasn't planning on uploading that to YouTube at all. Mostly because my camera, my primary camera, is set up for this. And in order to do, the typical stream where you see the gamer in the corner making noise and facial expressions and, all the normal human things, it was going to be too much effort for me to move the camera. So I basically just turned off the mic even. I didn't bother moving the camera. Turned off the mic, and it was just the game for about 2 hours by itself. No me intervening. And that video has been viewed already a half a dozen times, which for my, little over a dozen times. Which for me, I posted that up on Sunday, is a pretty phenomenal rate of view on Twitch. My videos normally don't get that much review, mostly because I'm streaming at an odd time. Most of the people who would follow this type of stream are working or in school or doing something. It is a weird time of the day. I think I'm going to take this vine and this bit of foliage here, and I'm going to kind of wrap it up over the top of the knee and join it with this tree. And this part of the tree goes in front of it. But I think visually speaking, joining those together gives me a lot of extra depth visually that I wasn't going to get otherwise. Yeah, that's a good choice. Oh, my neck. This is not good drawing posture. But not a lot I can do about it with this setup. I need to do a lot of rearranging of my studio. Rearranging and cleaning up. I've got a technological heap underneath this desk. I've got to sort it all and box it away. or just get rid of it. And some of it I'm not ready to get rid of just because it's parts of 3D printers. I can rebuild them, but I need to go through them to find out if I'm actually going to rebuild them. Again, one of those things that I'm just discovering about myself. And I've been aware of that kind of particular part of my personality for a while. I tend to hold on to things thinking, oh, sometime in the future, etc., etc. But I know in my heart of hearts that at no point in the future will I ever. So I just need to kind of buckle down and be sincere with my intentions, even though I would like to do something. Doesn't necessarily mean I'll actually get around to it. So getting rid of boxes of printer parts is probably going to be a weekend project this week. Get my everything cleaned out from under the desk. Which will let me rearrange my lights. Get my drawing tablet arranged up at an angle so I can sit up more. Right now I'm kind of hunched over this desk because it's laying flat. And that's one of the worst ways to draw. Give me just a moment. 10,000 years! I'll give you such a crick in the neck. Did it again. Went too deep on that brush. And I know my hand's right in front of the camera again. Ah, jeez. Yeah. I thought this was going to be a short drawing, but this is turning out to be a long drawing. Where are we at right now? Minute and 3 seconds. No, that's $1.03. That's an hour and 3 minutes. So, wow, I've only been inking for about 20 minutes. Yeah. Definitely need to. Good example of needing to rebuild my stamina for this. Yes, I know, but there's no other way I can get in here and get these lines done without putting my hand right in front of the camera. That and eventually being able to reposition the camera and get a much better angle for it is definitely a future goal. So I'm not too worried about it, but at the same time I'm a little worried about it. I'm going to continue to fuss over it until I can do something about it. Come on, little brush, just be light. There we go. Come on. Once I get my bright lights in, this whole process will be much, much easier. All right. Coming along. Let me put a little more just junk in here. I'm thinking of where rust will pool, where the water will pool and run, which will give me my locations for rust. But not all the parts of the robot are going to be capable of rust. Otherwise, later on in the story, how is he expected to suddenly move? Oh, come on, pen. There we go. Yeah, you just caught me pushing my brush into the page. I really have to watch that habit. When I was younger, I used to hunch like this all the time while I was drawing. I kind of craved the ache in the back of my neck and the shoulders, which meant that I had been drawing for a long period of time. Looking back on it, it's kind of weird and a little sadistic. Little masochistic? I don't know. I can never tell which one's which. Urgh. Well, it's coming along. We're getting a lot of this ink work down pretty quickly. I mean, even still considering yeah. One of my very bad habits is moving around a drawing and inking a piece here and a part there and forgetting which pieces overlap what. And then I go through to erase some of my lines, which I should do right now, and end up getting rid of a whole bunch of guidelines that I needed to have, and all of a sudden I don't have because I forgot to ink them. I get too far ahead of myself and forget to do a part or something like that, and then yeah. I'm just erasing guidelines right now. I don't want to erase a lot of my shading yet. I do want to hang on to that for just a minute. Some of the simpler parts, like the arms, I'm not worried about keeping the shading on. But like up here in the knee, I need to get rid of that. I've already tried to go back and ink that twice, forgetting that it's behind, not in front. Same with this. Okay. So I should be good now. That will help me move forward. Come on, pen. That was a great line, and now I can't find the page with my pen. Jeez. Here we go. So the next step, once I get all this line work done, is going to go through my most heavily shadowed areas and add thicker lines. And one of the reasons for that, you can see I already did it a little bit down here, is it adds contrast right away. I mean, like, don't have to do anything else, and it already adds contrast and separates a lot of the parts out. And if I can do it right, so now I can indicate the back of this like a sphere by bringing that up there. Then this is all shadowed here. But you can see it separates things a lot better, the elements. Just by, it's not even real shading, it's not a real background part, but it does the job of telling the same story. But just kind of thinking of a few little places here. I don't want to quite go through and do every part of that just yet, because I still have this whole half of the drawing to do all of the background elements in. And I think the way this is going to end up working is I kind of want to add a background element. Let me put a bush in here to contrast a little more between the foreground and the background. And I'm thinking that this entire area here should just be blacked out, just knocked completely back. Actually, maybe even darker at the top, and then come down to a lighter bottom here, so it kind of looks like it's enclosed in a ravine. But we'll see how that works out when I actually get to that point. So that's just really quickly putting some rocks in there, and then I can pull them out a little bit more. And kind of separate them one from another a little bit better. I'm bending my brush again. All right. So I'm getting my, I shouldn't pull this down. Getting my picture recentered and my old thick pen brush. I'll start putting in these thicker lines. At this point, this thing inks a lot more like a Sharpie than a brush pen. This is not going as fast as I had hoped for a minute, but it's going as fast as I enjoy, so that works out well. Since this one's up in the air, I'm not going to put too heavy of a shadow on it, especially since it's also farther away. I want it to look a little less substantial. Where else? On the rocks. And what I'm doing is I'm periodically checking my camera because it's giving me a more far away view of what's going on, so I can determine which lines I really want to pick out more. Uh-huh. And this side of the tree, just towards the bottom, not the whole thing. Yeah. And now I'm going to switch back to the brush again, the brush pen, and do some of these more delicate parts of the fingers, because I want these to stand out too, but I don't want to wash out the details with a big old thick brushing of black. And I want to get some black in between these two to separate them. There we go. And now, good old-fashioned 0.5. I'm just going to start off the edge here so I can get my mojo flowing before I get into the meat and potatoes of this drawing. And if you can't tell, I just made a scribble up the side of this rock and following it with that crosshatch just to the tip of the scribble. It's kind of a silly way to do it, but this is why I wanted to get my mojo in. My crosshatch has turned more horizontal where it was more angular before. So I should have done a cross-hatching exercise. And I did not. I'm trying to indicate here an uneven, roughened surface. And then I'm going to place that in shadow. And let me pull my pencil marks away from there. So you can see what that's going to end up looking like. It's not too bad. I've had worse. This is becoming tedious to me, mostly because of the pain in my neck, but I can imagine if it's tedious for me, it must be horrible for you. Most people are probably skipping around the video trying to find the interesting parts. So, spoiler alert, there aren't any interesting parts. I'm this interesting all the time. Oh, what did I drop? I dropped a little brush. Not something I'm planning on using today, so that's all right. Let's do a little bit of replanning. Pull out good old 2B again. Smack my camera around. And I want to reshade my arms. I erased all of the shading that I had planned with the arm as I was getting rid of the sketch marks. But I kind of need some of this. So I'm seeing like right here, right to there. And then light. So these are like that, and these are like that. And then like that. Let's get this seam in before I forget it and erase the line. And I'm just double checking for anything else. I'm going to do the tree bark in a different way than I usually do tree bark. Normally I ignore the tree bark because bark can be both such a regular and a dysregular pattern that it's kind of difficult. I'm planning on getting a second camera here in the next few months with a real camera stand so that I can set up a dual shot. This overhead shot will be set up much better, and then I can have a over-the-shoulder image, which will give you a much better idea of what I'm seeing. But that's down the road. But for this, the reason I bring that up is because drawing bark in shadow, I mean, all of this is bark in shadow. And what I'm doing is I'm kind of making really, really super irregular grids, kind of cube shapes, or boxes or squares or whatever you want to call them. But I'm trying to keep them irregular enough that they don't look like they're repeating. And I'm doing that by basically I'm coming down and over to close up the box, and then I'm coming out again and bringing down and over. But I'm trying to do it so that this box and this box don't really line up, so like poorly laid bricks. And then I'm also shaking the pen so that the sides of the box appear irregular and the boxes are all irregular shapes. And that's giving me kind of a deciduous bark texture. And it's one I figured out when I was way back starting college. This is a technique I stumbled on quite by accident in 2005. No, before then. It would have been 2003, possibly 2002. It was the first time I had gone back to college. And my landscape professor told me that it's really similar to the technique that he uses. And it's kind of a combination of, I had had some experience with what do you call it, architectural rendering, and drawing the trees as an architectural renderer is more or less an exercise in controlled chaos. Because architects are not fine artists, and they have to come up with shorthand that their engineer brains can understand to represent trees in a way that everybody else understands that they are trying to represent a tree. But because I had had some exposure to that technique of drawing branches and leaves, I had kind of made a hybrid technique of controlling my pen in a certain way. And actually that was a painting class, so it was my brush. And trying to get the chaos to go in a single direction. And like I said, my professor was kind of surprised because it's a technique that he had used frequently before, and he, as far as I know, he still does landscapes, mostly because he enjoys drawing trees. And I never did grow a fondness of drawing trees. I don't find this to be at all zen. Oh, that looks good on camera. Certainly much better than it does up close and personal. And again, this is a mold line for rust. I've got big thick lines on these rocks laid down. I need some contrasty thin lines to make them look rock-like. And going to switch back to good old-fashioned 0.5 and finish putting in some of these crosshatch lines that I started with. Now that I've done some, I can go forward a little more confidently. doing good. That hand looks okay on camera. I think we're ready to move forward. And if I can concentrate on maintaining my speed, and by maintaining my speed I do mean keeping it slow and deliberate, I think we'll be able to maintain the cross-hatching effect I'm going for. I'm doing the inside separately because it's a different grade of shadow. Even though I want the shadow to go in the same direction, I kind of feel like it should be a different grade. I want to thicken that darkness up there. Ooh, I should really think about getting some tunes on my stream. I'm sure this is difficult enough to follow without dead silence putting you to sleep every couple minutes. I know it's murder on me. But that's partly because of ADHD and lack of medicating it. There we go. And then as well as, how do I want to? Because this is also a shadow. And I'm bringing this up into the original shadow because I do want them to blend together. Even though these crosshatches are pretty close in angle, it'll help distinguish that shadow as a darker area. And then get my rusted metal in here. Whew. We are cruising along on this. Getting some good detail in here. I'm kind of enjoying this. I'm hypnotizing myself a bit. So I went to a mass hire event today. Which is why this stream did not go out at 9 o'clock like normal. How are we looking on camera? Oh, that's coming along nicely. It's actually doing much better than I expected. This is getting quite tedious now. Come on. That's better. Oh, bad habits. Every artist makes sound effects when they draw. Especially comic book artists. I know every comic book artist I've ever worked with or spoken to or in any way interacted with, they always do sound effects when they draw. I had an instructor while I was in school who worked on the first 3 seasons of The Simpsons, and boy, he had a sound effects problem. I tell you, he could not hold a marker in his pen. That was a weird sentence. He could not hold the pen for the whiteboard in his hand without doing special effects. He was going to draw something, and I tell you what, it was going to explode, or it was going to be swift, or something like that. It was going to make a sound effect. We used to play a game with him. He taught principles of animation, and he taught 2D animation, and what was the third one he taught? History of animation. And we used to play a game with him. He didn't know we were playing the game because he wasn't very good at it, where we would try to get him to tell stories from when he was working and see exactly how long we could keep him off topic. I mean, yeah, we were there to learn. We were there for an education, but boy, that was just absolutely hilarious to get him off topic, and he could stay off topic for a long time. He was a very animated storyteller. I don't think I'm going to go in and put in a black field like I had talked about earlier, because at this point in the drawing I should be wrapping up. Let's bring this drawing to a close, putting in a few more cross hatches for the stonework behind him. And some rapid shadows for bushes and junk. And tedious work of laying in shadows for bushes. You know, I would just cut the video here and finish the drawing and then cut to the finished piece. And I'll do that for my YouTube viewers. But for the stream, I can't really do that. I don't have a way of uploading videos. They changed their policy, and I know a lot of creators, a lot of Twitch creators were really upset at the policy change. But unless you meet a specific series of requirements, you can't upload videos. You can only stream. So the only way to get your videos on Twitch right now is to stream them and set your streaming settings to save the stream automatically, because you can save it to your computer, and I did that with my first one on October 1st, and I did not hit the correct setting to save it in my Twitch channel. So you can find it on my YouTube channel, but it's completely missing from my Twitch channel, and that's the reason right there. I can't re-upload it to Twitch. Twitch does not currently support that for my channel. So yeah, Twitch guys, if you're watching this from the archive, you got to sit through this entire spiel and while I'm talking about it. But probably for my YouTube viewers, they won't have to sit through all of this so much. On this one at least, I think I'll have cut it a few minutes ago and go straight to the finished product. I wish I could do that from my perspective. This is not the type of thing that I really truly enjoy. It's one of the reasons why I usually skip environments and backgrounds. Now, what I'm doing here is a trick I learned from an architectural renderer for making leaves rapidly, something that looks like leaves at least. Instead of drawing all of the little leaves, it's basically drawing a version of that really close together and yeah, very, very randomly. You have to have your pen shaking while you do it, or else it doesn't quite work. You make it smaller to put tighter shadows in, you make it bigger to put lighter shadows in. Change direction every now and then just to make sure that it doesn't develop a pattern. And right up underneath, the reason I showed all these demarcations, these sections here, is I want to have a deeper shadow on the outside of all of these. So I want to have some highlight mixed with deeper shadow there. And I did this a little bit for the ruins drawing. I don't remember spending quite so much time on leaves and foliage in that drawing. Whew. Shake it out, shake it out, shake it out. Out the hand, shake out the hand. Oh my goodness. I'm going to have to spend a lot of time stretching my hand out tonight. This drawing has really done my hand some ill intention. And I know this doesn't look like it should be that stressful, but I mean muscular stress, not emotionally stressful. This is anything but emotionally stressful. It's just my hand is making a whole bunch of rapid twitch movements very quickly, and I'm just not that avid of a video gamer, and I don't do console games at all. So these twitch muscles have kind of atrophied since I stopped playing NES as a wee lass. Oh yeah, I meant to go back in and darken this side up so that it has shadows. You know, I see comic book artists do trees and foliage in a very, very different way, and I just can't wrap my head around it. So I've tried it a few times, but just the inability to quite understand what they're doing. They're simplifying it. I mean, they simplify it from what I'm doing here, so it's not that big of a deal. But I just can't seem to wrap my head around what it is that they're doing differently, because it looks like, to my eye, I've seen a lot of comic book artists do trees that look like architectural rendering stuff like what I'm doing, but they make it look so much more simple. They do it with far fewer lines, and one of the reasons they do it with far fewer lines is they've got to crank out. I mean, assuming they're working on one comic book a month, they've got to crank out 30 pages. That's 30 full-sized drawn pages drawn to completion, and then colored, and then, well, and then inked, and then colored. And they've got to put the word bubbles on. They've got to, just all this stuff that needs to happen inside of a month. Well, it really leaves a comic book artist with, like half a month to do those 30 pages in. And they have to work extremely quickly and extremely efficiency. That was totally the word I meant to say. Extremely efficiently. And failure to do so is, failure to produce the comic that month. So they need to be completely on top of all of their techniques all of the time. It's kind of a trait I envy a bit. I think this lump here was intended to be a rock, but it's a bush now. Oh, there we go. One more final touch up, just a bit with the thick brush, just to give these a little bit of final depth. a little more separation because of that depth. Oh, and the school's let out. I can hear the megaphone from the school, the announcement speaker. There we are. How do we look now? I think that looks fantastic. I feel fantastic. I think we're going to call this one done. Sign it, seal it. Oh joy. Thank you for joining me for this episode of Inktober with RamDragon Studio, and I look forward to seeing you again tomorrow.